All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kristen Brooks, Executive Director with the Riverside County Office of Education, supporting Inclusive Practices Project. On behalf of our entire team, we'd like to welcome you to this first Paraeducator Series session number 1, with several to follow. We just want to remind you of our vision for this work, our project, and our partners that we are very near and dear in thanking and in partnership with is our Chime Institute folks. So our collective vision really is intentionally designed, equitable, and inclusive educational systems for all students. So we leave you with a statement of innovate, include, impact, and that's what our work is all about. So we are very grateful to have Dr. Studer and his team here today. Just so you know, this is a webinar style on Zoom, and so you are automatically muted and your video is off. You will be able to see the presenters as they are speaking. This session will be recorded and archived, and the link will go out to everyone who registered for this event. Feel free to share that broadly. This is information we want to make sure gets out into the hands of folks in the field right away. So again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and we know this is going to be a great start to the series. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Studer.
Great, thanks, Kristen. Appreciate that, and we are looking forward to kicking off this series. It's very exciting for us to get a chance to share with fellow practitioners and share a little bit about our program. And speaking of that, I'm going to start by sharing my screen and bringing up a little PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll hit slideshow play from start. And oh, good, that worked. All right. So my name is Aaron Studer. I am the executive director at Chime Charter School in Los Angeles. And I am joined today by two of my colleagues, Adi Buchinsky. She is a special education teacher, a national board certified special educator, and a teacher on special assignment. She kind of runs many things in our special education department at Chime. Miss Buchinsky, go ahead and wave or say hello. There we go. And I am also joined by Caitlin Healy, who has been a special education teacher at Oakland Unified as well as Chime, and she is now our assistant principal for our entire school program. Caitlin, wave, say hi.
Everybody.
So they're going to assist me as we go through our presentation here today, and just a little bit of background and how we're involved in the SIP project and what we try to bring. Chime Institute is a nonprofit organization in Los Angeles that's actually been in existence since 1990. We started as a preschool program in partnership with California State University Northridge, creating fully inclusive preschool classrooms on the CSUN campus. That broadened to a regional center vendor program where we actually provide early intervention services to children birth to age 3 in inclusive center-based program settings, as well as in the home. And then we did that for about 11 years, and families so appreciated our inclusive model of educational programming. They encouraged us to start a school, which Chime did in 2001. With 70 students, K through 4, on a little church campus that we rented in Northridge. And now we're proud to have our campus in the West San Fernando Valley with almost 800 students, TK through 8th grade. And every single one of our classrooms is fully inclusive. We don't have a resource room. We don't have a special day class. We serve students from all 13 disability categories under IDEA. And all of our students are, as I said, fully included and receive their services and supports through co-teaching, collaboration, push-in model supports, and we make effective use of paraprofessionals. They are an integral part of our model. And as such, we have some opinions about the best ways to integrate paraprofessionals into a program and how to effectively train them so that they can be that vital part of the an inclusion-oriented program. And we're going to share some of you today. We saw that there are many participants. I'm looking right now, 189 participants. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you're making time on a Thursday afternoon to be with us. And oh my goodness, we've just gone up to 191. But nonetheless, I have to confess that I originally thought, oh, we'll have about 30 people. And so I've got a couple interactive features thinking we were going to be a smaller group. We're still going to do them and do our best, but we might do some changes as we go. But it is an interactive presentation. So even though it's a webinar style, keep on your toes because we are going to be asking you to participate. I won't do the norms because the webinar is basically done. The norms, your microphones and video are both off because we're webinar style because we now have 200 participants. But we are going to give you opportunities to interact and react with us. So what are our objectives?
Interject real quick?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
We have some messages in the chat that they're trying to see the interpreter, and her video should be spotlighted. If you go to your view on your Zoom, it depends on the type of device you have, but if you go to view and gallery or side by side, you should be able to see two videos as well as the slides at the same time. There is a little gray toggle switch between the slides and the videos that you can adjust to make the videos larger or smaller in comparison to the slides. So please be sure to check your personal viewing options on whatever device you're using to be able to see both the presenter and the ASL interpreter. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to give just a 15-second pause here to give people a chance to do that. And I do see, for a moment, one attendee raised their hand. Maybe that has been taken down. But if you do have go ahead and put it in the chat. We are actively monitoring that and can help out whoever might need some assistance. All right. Cool. Hopefully we're all set up with our camera views now. And I will just briefly talk about the objectives. We want participants to analyze the elements of a successful paraprofessional training program. So on our participant list of signups, we had paraprofessionals and we also had special teachers and administrators. And so on the front end of our presentation today, we're going to talk about what it means to set up a successful paraprofessional training program, at least from Chime's perspective. What have we tried to do? What do we think about when we train our paraprofessionals? Because we actually have paraprofessionals in every single one of our classrooms. So we have a number of paraprofessionals that we're thinking about and trying to understand how to best train them and get them what they need so that they can be effective in their role of supporting students. We want you also to consider the ways in which paraprofessionals can be prepared to execute their role of student support. What is it that they actually need to be prepared to go into those classrooms and work effectively to support students and work effectively in that classroom team? Sometimes, and maybe this isn't the case for your school or for your school district, but sometimes I've run into this scenario where paraprofessional support can look like an adult being put in a room and told, here, help this student. Right, without not a lot of consideration of what do they need to know before they even go into that classroom, and what do they need to know to be truly helpful for that student, and not just asked to be there, right? And then develop tools to draft a paraprofessional training program. So we want you to think through what it is that you would want to put into a program to make it effective, and then we're going to give you. And this is going to be the second part of the presentation, is going to give you a sneak peek at what do we do? What are the first things that we think about when we are putting together our paraprofessional training? And so first thing, what do paras need to know? What are their onboarding procedures? How should their first few days of work be scaffolded? How do we know they are ready for their role? And how can they play their role effectively to maximize student learning? These are all questions that we ask ourselves and that we think schools should ask themselves too when they're thinking about paraprofessional support. So oftentimes we maybe know what our staffing should be. We know our students who need support. We know the rooms that they're going to be in, but have we actually paused, broken down what they need to know? What procedures need to be, do aware of? Um, what do they need to know about the ways in which they can work with a student or work in a classroom? What do they? What are the sort of must know pieces of information before they're even allowed to go in the room? And then what do we teach the next day and the next day and the next week and the week after that? And how can we tell that they're ready for their role? So let's take a look at that and do a quick poll. What are your onboarding procedures for paraprofessionals currently? What do they look like in your school or district? And we're going to launch this poll, and we have a couple of options for you. So this is the participation opportunity. So on toast, get ready to click a button. So does it look like we do not have a formal onboarding training for paraprofessionals? There's a short onboarding training, but its implementation is inconsistent. We have a process, but it is not sufficient to provide the parents with all the knowledge they need. Or we have a successful onboarding process for paraprofessionals that has been developed by a number of school stakeholders. You don't have to remember all that. I'm going to launch the poll right now. It's going to be in front of you. And we got 222 on the line. Let's see how many of you can answer. Okay, got 70. Oh, we're almost up to 100 out of the 225. Give it about another 30 seconds. So if you haven't got your answers in yet, please try to get your answers in and we'll take a look at our results. This is exciting. Polls are all the rage these days. We have polls all over the place. And we have polls right here in our training. Got 64 participants who have got their answers in. Let's give it 5 more seconds and then we will end the poll and show the results. We will end in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. End poll and share results. So there we go. It looks like, at least according to this, we have a plurality, right, of people. 61 or 35% of you who answered say we don't have a formal onboarding training for paraprofessionals. And then another 35 of you, or 20%, said there's a short onboarding training, but its implementation is inconsistent. And then a few said we have it, but it's not sufficient. Actually, a good chunk, 47, that was a second place answer. And then the minority of you said that you have a successful onboarding process, you like it, and it's been sort of vetted by a number of school stakeholders. So what that says to me is that there are a number of you out there who are in schools that need to think deeply about how do we prepare our paraprofessionals to go into the classroom. One of the things that I have noted in working at a number of different schools, not just Chime, but other schools throughout my career, is that paraprofessionals, not only are they extremely important to helping children with special needs be effective, but they're most often given the least information and are apt to make mistakes very early on in their careers. And sometimes those mistakes are significant enough to either cause them to leave the profession or cause them be separated from employment. And you know, occasionally it's because they weren't given all the right information, right? They weren't given a good grounding in what it is that they need to know to be effective in the classroom. So, what are our onboard procedures at Chime? And I've been talking a bit, toss this over to Miss Buczynski, one of my colleagues. I think I see she's got her working from home picture up. I'll give her a moment to turn her camera on. Otherwise,
I don't know that I
switch to-
can turn my camera on because of the double view that is trying to get figured out. Oh, there we go. There we
Either way,
go.
it's okay. You have a very Bitmoji that could have represented you quite well. But why don't you share a little bit, because I know, Adi, you're one of our lead people in this onboarding process, and just kind of talk us through this slide and what procedures are at Chime.
Sure. So when our paraprofessionals are hired, before they start their first day, we have a pre-recorded video with a quiz that goes through our inclusive model and philosophy and some general policies and procedures, things like how to call out when you come to work, where should you park, how do you clock in, things like that. And also some safety procedures, like should we have an earthquake or an earthquake drill on the first day that you're with us? What does that look like? Fire drills, things like that. And then they take a quiz to verify that all of the information has been obtained. Then they come to campus, they do all their other onboarding stuff like live scan, all of that. And then their first day on campus, they get this classroom orientation checklist, and it helps orient their conversations with the classroom teachers they're working with, so that both parties are making sure that the paraprofessional gains all the information that they need about general classroom policies, information, how do we dismiss students to use the restroom, what do you want me to do as a paraprofessional during whole group instruction, during small group work, and then also student-specific information so that the paraprofessional can support the students in the classroom who have specific needs. And then we have a Friday training, and those first 2 Fridays for our new paraprofessionals look like going through classroom roles and playground roles, and talking through some theory and best practices and also some examples. And we have 2 of our most veteran paraprofessionals working on our campus. They're actually the ones who run that. And that creates sort of a mentee-mentor relationship between our new hires and our veteran paraprofessionals. And then after that, they take a short answer quiz. And then the next step is they have a brief conference with me, and we go over the answers to their quiz. And at this point, I've also checked in with the teachers they're working with to see if there are any concerns they're having or any particular concepts they want me to review with the paraprofessional when I'm meeting with them. And for most paraprofessionals, that's sort of the last stop on their onboarding training. And then if a paraprofessional needed any specific additional follow-up, we would schedule it from there.
And
Great,
Erin,
thank you.
I'm just going to jump in and point out that we have a couple of hands raised. So I don't know if Madeline, Delia, or Sylvia wanted to open up their mic or type in the chat.
Yeah, that would be fine. I honestly am not sure on the settings. Maybe Kristen, you can tell me, are people able to open their mic, or is that some, oh, I see. I can press allow to talk. Well,
Yes.
Madeline, let's see. Madeline, let's start with you. Open up your mic, go ahead.
Maybe while Madeline's working on that, we do have in the chat Delia's question. Are you using the
Sure.
Zoom app or desktop version? About view. Oh, maybe this is about viewing. Forgive me. She was having a viewership question.
Yeah. Okay. Sylvia, I'm going to go to you and see if you want to open up your mic. Go ahead, Sylvia.
I'm sorry, no, I just wasn't sure if I was in the right classroom.
I think you might be.
Okay.
If you're interested in paraprofessional training, you're in the right place. All right, cool. Thank you so much. I'm going to loop back to the slide here real quick and just note, you're going to get
Excuse
this
me,
slide.
this is the interpreter. I'm so sorry.
No,
Really
go ahead.
quick, we have deaf participants who cannot see me. They're using a Chromebook that is given by the school, and for whatever reason, I'm not spotlighted for them. Is there any way that you can allow them to spotlight me or pin me?
You are spotlighted. And
Right, but-
you are pinned.
but-
It is likely the device that they are using. So I put in the chat, it depends also on if they're using the app or the desktop version. So this is available on iPads, laptop, Mac, phones. We will also, again, be recording this and closed captioning it and uploading it to the YouTube channel. But it really does depend on the device you're using when you log into Zoom. We're in webinar mode. Everyone is muted and their videos are off. The panelists can select folks who are raising their hand and do a request to unmute. And at that point, you would be able to unmute your microphone. You can't unmute it on your end unless one of the panelists releases. Since we have 246 participants on the line, if we open all of the microphones, then we would likely be talking all over each other. So please feel free to use the chat, the Q&A, or request with your hand up to unmute. But please be sure you check your device in your version of Zoom. That is likely causing a barrier to your access.
Okay, hopefully that helps those participants to navigate that. Okay, I'm going to orient back to this slide. And what I wanted to share about this is you get this slide deck, actually find the list of questions on the right-hand side of this slide incredibly helpful for thinking through what are the things, what are the questions that paraprofessionals need the answer to be effective in their earliest days of working in the classroom and supporting a student. So thank you, Adi, for getting us through that. One of the other things that you think just building wide is, how many of our paraprofessionals need basic training? How many of our paraprofessionals need advanced training? Which staff members will develop the training? So who are the people that are going to lead this process? And who's going to do the training, of course, and which ones of our paraprofessional staff after the training are going to need additional supports on campus. So that kind of leads us to our next question. Do you differentiate your paraprofessional PD program? I know that there are times when there's one program and it kind of happens here, and then others schools, they have different offerings for paraprofessionals depending on their years in the field and whether they're new or returning or one of our veteran paraprofessionals. So let's go ahead and launch this poll real quick. So do you differentiate your para PD? And here are your possibilities. We don't have a lot of PD for our paraprofessionals. Regardless of knowledge, our paraprofessionals receive the same each year. Or our school has a plan to differentiate the professional developers receive based on their knowledge levels and years of experience. Awesome. We are off and running and we've got 54 participants already answering. Go ahead and click on the answer for your school. Now, you can't all see what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the poll return in live time. It feels like when I'm watching one of the debates and they show like, did debater just said, did we not like what the debater just said? And the line kind of goes up and down. So maybe this is more thrilling on my end than yours. 160 of you have participated so far. That's 65%. Let's give it another 10 seconds. If you haven't gotten your answers in, please try to do so now. And we will end the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And we will end poll and we will share the results. All right, there we go. So it looks like we have 68 of you out of those who answered. 36% said have a lot of PD for our paraprofessionals. Now, going to surprise you that the presenters here today are going to say, well, we should work on that, because we actually think paraprofessional PD is a key component to having a successful school program overall, no matter what model of school program you're running, but especially if you are an inclusion-oriented school, right? And I'm thinking that many of you who obviously are here and part of the SIP project, that's your goal. You're working on being, or currently are, an inclusion-oriented school. And so training those paraprofessionals and having them be highly effective is really important. A few of you said that regardless of knowledge, our paraprofessionals receive the same PD every year. So 92 of you who answered are getting PD. That's awesome. But after a certain amount of time, it may not be the most effective way to be providing information to our paraprofessionals. And just like in any profession, particularly in education, whether you're an administrator or a teacher or a paraprofessional, you have a growth as a professional. You can always be learning, you can always be improving. And schools who are designing their PD programs for paraprofessionals need to keep that in mind too, right? That we should always be pushing our paraprofessionals to their next level of skill, okay? And then 31 of you, awesome, good for you, said that your school has a plan to differentiate paraprofessional PD. That's excellent. I'm really proud of those schools. That's one of the things that I think all schools should think about for every level in their building, all their educators, all their administrators, right, to differentiate their PD. We don't need to spend time teaching you what you already know. We want to effectively identify what you don't know and teach you that and bring you to your next level of skill. Okay, awesome. I will stop that share and we will move forward. And I'm going to have you take this and talk a little bit about the frequency and how we plan out our PD calendar. And I'm going to actually risk a slide one more, because just so you can sneak preview it, that's what our answers are. Here's the questions that set up that slide. So go ahead.
Yeah, so thinking at Chime, we have the full day professional development for paras every August when we kind of return to campus. And that's an opportunity where some people might get content they've already seen and some people are going to be brand new. Just like Adi Baczynski was saying earlier, the brand new hires are going to have this personalized, individualized, double 45-minute session with sort of an expert mentor para to help orient them. Then to plan it, there's division leads from the special ed department who collaborate with each other to sort of review what worked the year before and plan for the fall. So that does occur over the summer, the sort of scope and sequence of paraprofessional training for the year. And that's when some new ideas might get bandied about and some other things might get sort of recycled and updated. We've had a wide variety of programming based on the needs of the student demographic and population we're serving, based on things like distance learning, right? We've gone remote with our para training, which we never anticipated. So we had to be adaptable in planning for that. So again, the PD week when we open up, and then we move, once everyone's oriented and kind of had their Para 101 crash course and checked out with our TOSA, Ms. Baczynski, then they start attending every Friday morning. So it is early, it's 7:20 to 8:05. Special education teachers are relieved of supervision duties or prep duties so that they can teach the sections. And this past year, we looped people by like K2, 3, 5, 6 through 8 in terms of grades. So you might get to be with the special education teacher that you work with on a daily basis as a paraprofessional, or you're getting exposed to other special educators in your sort of grade level division. And the idea was that we want our paras to be dynamic and able to work in a wide variety of settings during their time at Chime. So we don't want people to sort of get pigeonholed as just a kinder para. They want, really dynamic and able to work in a variety of settings. And ideally in these courses, what we're doing is reinforcing concepts that the paras are working with during that time in the school year. So some of our early trainings in the fall might be emergency preparedness. How do you support someone with mobility needs during an emergency? Something really tactical and tangible that they need to know immediately. Whereas later in the year, as the para skills are gaining in the classroom, they're analyzing more what is the difference between an accommodation and a modification of an assignment in classwork. So the scope and sequence, again, is co-planned by a group of special educators in the summer, and it's always tweaked as we're going, but that's sort of the when we're doing para training.
Cool, thank you. And I just want to also acknowledge a couple of things that came in the Q&A and say it out loud just in case you weren't tracking. One question came in, said, are we gonna see a little bit more of the training for paras? Because we know we have kind of a mixed group today. We have people who play the role of paraprofessionals, and then we have people who are playing the role of a supervisor of a paraprofessional or maybe a supervisor of a special education program. Yes, we are absolutely gonna get to that. And we're going to show you our Para 101 first training and kind of walk through it with you. So there's going to be that content coming up in just a few minutes. Right now, we're casting the vision, right? What is the vision for paraprofessional development at schools? And I think you're kind of seeing it build here. Hopefully you're spotting this theme. One is that paraprofessional PD happens before paras ever get in the classroom. We have a plan to onboard them and equip them with information so that they know what they need to know to be successful in their first days of school of being a paraprofessional. Second thing is that when we get into our formal para program, we differentiate it. We don't want para to have the same thing every year or constantly building on their skill set as a professional and a vital member of our school team. And then the third thing is that it's frequent. It's not just something that happens in August. It happens August and it happens regularly. In our case, weekly. That might not be what your school can budget time-wise, but weekly throughout the school year, we are supporting training and providing information to our paraprofessionals because we think they are that, and we think the role play at our school is that important. Okay, so real quick, we'll take a look at this. We use a lot of different instructional materials and approaches. We obviously have put together a whole training program revised over years and years and years, and that's one of the things to think about. If you're a school district on the front end of this, you don't have to invent it all right away. You can build it over the years and continue to refine it. We're always looking at our program, refining it, adding to it, etc. There are published curriculum and training courses out there. We do live instruction with our paraprofessionals. We've really built up our online course offerings over this year. Even with school closure, COVID-19, we did not stop para PD. We may have paused it a little bit while we got our feet under. We did return to paraprofessional development online through recorded sessions and live sessions as well, and coaching conversations. Quick technical note, I do see that we have some participants with your hands up. If you could do me a favor, and if you do have a hand up and jump in with a question, could you also just put a comment in the chat or the Q&A saying, yes, I would like to ask my question now about the presentation. And then Ms. Buczynski, Ms. Healy can just sort of stop me and open up your microphone. A little bit about the content. And I think some of this may be, the part that is most obvious to schools. You know, they know the things they want to train their paras on, but maybe they just don't know how to structure it or how to make time for it or those kind of things. But we're certainly working on behavior supports. I think that's pretty common. Social emotional learning, big topic for us. We do a good on the history of special education and special education law. We want our paraprofessionals to understand the context in which they're working and why did this thing called special education come about, and what are the laws, what are the rules that govern it. We also want them to hear from special education service providers. So a number of our DIS providers actually lead some of our trainings, our speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists. They talk about the ways in which the paraprofessional can support their work and why their work is important to the growth of the student in meeting their IEP goals. We also talk a little bit about self-care. You know, many of you I know are paraprofessionals on this webinar today. I was a paraprofessional. That's where I started in my educational career. $7.25 an hour. That'll tell you how long ago that was. But it's a tough job, right? It's a tough job. And sometimes we're dealing with some of our students who have our most significant issues, and it's our role to help and support them. But there can be a stress with that. There can be strain, just like any job, but certainly for our paraprofessionals, talk about self-care and how to be a mindful professional in the classroom space. Communication supports as well. Couple shout outs to some available content. And actually, I'm going to pitch this to a D, if you would, and just tell us a little bit more about where you found these contents and what people might find when they go there.
So through the Eldorado SELPA, there's an 8-part series that's just a series of YouTube videos that Ms. Healy and I found extremely beneficial for our paraprofessionals. We had them work through all 8 sets. We did create a little note-taking guide just to make sure that all of the content we wanted to make sure came through. Communicators is a paraprofessional training curriculum that myself and our former speech pathologist authored that has some slides and some workbooks that go along with it. And then the National Education Association through this link right here, and you have access to the slides, so you can go in and click that link, have some additional resources. We find that having a balance of content created by our staff and presented by our staff combined with some professionals from other sites is helpful, just to keep the different perspectives in mind, and to have our paraprofessionals see sometimes a contrast and sometimes a similarity between different sites as well as ours.
Awesome, thank you. And I know we have a couple of our panelists are from the Eldorado SELPA. You know, just know that we've loved your materials and we're using them. If you want the note-taking guide that Ms. Buczynski and Ms. Healy developed for your 8-part series, let us know. We're happy to. Okay, so it's a quick poll, and we're gonna send this out. And just because I'm mindful of time and I want to make sure that we get to the Para 101 content, because I know there are some people on our webinar who really want to see what is it we're training our paras in. We're gonna move directly to that after this, and I'm wondering if Ms. Healy and Ms. Buczynski, if you want to take the lead on that, and we'll alternate slides through that. But let's launch our poll first. So, what do you see as the biggest barriers to effective paraprofessional training currently? Giving you a little vision of what we think is good para training and the content we use, but it's really important if you have schools or part of a district who's thinking of beefing up your para training to understand what are your barriers. You're going to have to be planful about addressing those barriers. So go ahead and jump in, answer now. Maybe it's difficult to find the time. Maybe you have a high turnover rate in your district. You are looking for those quality materials, and some of which we just shared and are publicly available and out there. all the above. Our barriers not on this list. Sorry, Mr. Presenter Man, you're not creative enough to have included our barriers, or we have no barriers. We have an awesome paraprofessional program. So we got about 95 of you who have responded so far. Keep it going, and we will get to our results. And I'll just do some transparent facilitation here. Ms. Buczynski, why don't you take the first 3 slides of the Para 101, and then Ms. Healy, the 3 slides after that, and we'll kind of toggle back and forth. All right, we got 162 of you, and we'll give it 10 more seconds. If you haven't answered, jump in now. Let your vote be counted. It is our theme of the month for the next 4 weeks-ish. Make sure your vote is counted, whatever you happen to be voting in. And we'll give this 10 more seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Awesome. And let's end the poll and share the results. And here we go. Okay, well, I probably could have anticipated that, which maybe is why I put that answer of all the above on there. That does get our plurality of votes with 65. It's all of them, all of those things. Not enough time, too many new people, and we don't have the quality materials we need. Well, totally get it. Those are common barriers, all 3 of them, and often we have all of them at once. I will share that I hope between getting this slide deck with our very first paraprofessional training that we give at Chime, along with some of those publicly available, we could at least knock that 3rd topic off the list and give you some quality materials to go in your schools with and lead some of these trainings. Or even if you're just a paraprofessional and there isn't a training program at your school, and you just want to independently access those materials to grow professionally, you can do that too. And I'll say, even though so if we kind of combine them, all of the above plus
I think Aaron froze there. So Adi or Caitlin, if you wanted to take it from here while we wait for Dr. Studer to come back online.
Do you mind advancing the slide so we can?
And Kristen, I see there's a new ASL interpreter for you to highlight.
I worry that Aaron was advancing the slides.
He was. Hang on 1 second. I will pull his slides up. You seeing those okay?
Yes. Do you mind advancing?
Sure.
So I think we're going to skip through this so that we can get to the Para 101 content. So these are the actual slides that we use in week 1 in our paraprofessional training. So imagine that we are all in brick and mortar again, and this is our first week of school. The concepts that we cover are professionalism and supervision. Supervision being a really important time where our paraprofessionals are working extremely hard and typically not with a lot of supervision from the teaching staff at those moments. So these are some topics that we cover. What does professionalism look like on our campus? How to interact with children and facilitate interactions with children, keeping in mind this is the beginning of the school year when we would typically present this. So how do we get those friendships up and going? How to effectively supervise during unstructured times? How to collect data on student goals and student behaviors? And what does collaboration look like? So lots of skills and help of paraprofessionals are needed. So we break down what are all of those different roles. And the truth is the job of a paraprofessional is wearing a lot of hats and switching those hats frequently throughout the day and throughout different activities. And so maybe you're feeling really confident in one role that you have, but another is feeling a little more challenging. So this is a time where if we had a smaller group, we could do some sharing out of some skills that people are feeling confident in, some strategies that help them feel successful in those skill areas. So the number one priority is to support students in learning independence and being part of their classroom. We sort of have a catchphrase, it's your job to work yourself out of a job. The most successful paraprofessional is the one who is pushing their students toward independence. And sometimes, and I've been a paraprofessional too, earlier in my career, and I remember feeling like if my supervisor walks in the room and I'm not directly with the student I'm supposed to be with, they're going to think I'm not doing my job, that I'm not working hard, that I'm not being successful. So this is a conversation we have with a lot of permission granting. Like, it's okay if your supervisor walks in the room and your target student is working with a couple of peers doing their math work independently and you're checking in on some other students. We want the students to be independent with the least amount of intervention and support from all of us.
I think I'm do I tag
Yep,
in?
that's exactly what I was gonna say.
All right, maybe I'll do the next 3 or so and then I'll tag you. A thing that we're always encouraging paras is and affirming for them is that it can be nuanced how they're helping students, because there's already a teacher, at least a general education teacher. For about a third of the day, there's also a special education teacher. So maybe they're co-teaching by team teaching or one lead, one support, using any of the co-teaching models. So, and they're leading lessons. So thinking about where the paraprofessional fits in can be kind of a gray area. Is the para providing targeted direct support to an individual? Is there sort of a little cadre of 3 or 4 kids that they're sort of monitoring and scaffolding for and modeling for? Or is it a veteran para who has a lot of skills and could be leading a small group themselves simultaneously in a center setting or remediation, if that's an area of expertise that the para has been developed in? So looking at this image, this is a way to think about it. Basically the things I already said, right? You're kind of this discrete supporting actor in the classroom who's very in tune to what the teacher is doing, what the students are doing, and thinking of ways to help the students stay on track, stay in their group, connect with their classmates. And just look at this graphic for a minute and think, do you visualize an adult in this image and where might they fit in? When I look at it, I kind of think that something behind the scenes happened to get all of the students together in a ring working independently or interdependently, right? There's probably a lot of staging that made that happen, where peers can support peers as partial supports, sort of eliminating the adult role, because we know that students with disabilities can often be kind of shadowed by a paraprofessional, and it impacts their social relationships and how they're seen by other students. So we really want to make sure that everyone is a full member of the class in terms of the children. Now I'll take the next slide if you don't mind. And I think I get to tee up MISCO for you, Adi, and then you're going to get to take it away. But this is a beloved acronym. I know everyone loves some alphabet soup. So you are going to move in as a para, you are going to support the student as a para, and then you're going to get out. Over to you, Adi.
So students are around, how do we create these dynamic relationships with the kids where I am an adult who is important in their lives and who they care about, and we have that positive rapport back and forth, but also I am an adult that they need to take direction from. So that can, again, be really nuanced. So how should you act? You should always remember that you are a role model. So the things that you're doing and saying or not doing or not saying make an impression on all of the students. So if we're in the middle of a 7th grade math class and you have your cell phone out, that's communicating to students that this content isn't important. This teacher isn't someone I need to listen to. So all of those really subtle pieces of language, of body language that you're communicating are part of what the students are learning from you. Taking cues from the teacher, whatever their dynamic is in the classroom, you're in there to support that. Being consistent, making sure we don't want a situation where the student's asking this adult if they can use the restroom, and then they're asking you, and they know maybe you'll be a little more lax, or this other adult is more lax. We want to make sure that in the classroom, whatever the rules and expectations are upheld by all of the adults. Be kind to students, be calm, be clear, use wait time, but also set limits and boundaries. We are all paid professionals who are paid to be in the students' lives. We're not their friends. We can be friendly, but we don't need to have social media relationships with students. They don't need to know aspects of our personal life. So making sure that we are upholding all of those expectations as well. Remember, you are the supporting actor in the classroom. You're not the student or the lead teacher. You're kind of in that in-between role, helping the teacher bring about the best in their students and helping the student bring about the best in their own learning. You're there to help both parties do what they need to do. So you might be supervising the basketball, not really, practicing your skills, but you're there, you're getting the game going. You might interact in the game for a little bit to get it up and moving and then back out. So the kids are the ones who are able to get all of that social skill practice as during that time. You're going to use cues and prompts as directed by staff. Different professionals have different prompting and cueing methods that they're going to want you to use. And it's important to be mindful of those and as appropriate to take data on those. And that acronym, MISCO, you're just going to come in, support the student with what they need, and then get out so they can have that space to practice the skill. And getting out might mean that you're not going very far. You might just take a couple of steps back and monitor and step in again as needed.
All right, I think I'm tagging in. It's time. What do I do? That's a capital I, forgive us, when I supervise students. And this is when I would, in para training as a teacher, I'd make a lot of jokes about, like, I've got my sunglasses on and I'm looking at the kids, right? You're monitoring what they're doing. As a para, sometimes it's not intuitive. At Chime, sometimes we find ourselves with paraprofessionals who this might be their first job. So we try to not make an assumption about where someone's at with their knowledge on something, but we also assume competence, right? This is what supervision looks like for us at Chime. The paras might be the main adults sort of running supervision during lunch and recess. They're the ones responsible for the well-being of the students. So this is a really active time for paras, right? They've already had their 10-minute break. They've already had their lunch break, or they're about to go to their own lunch break, but they're on for the students during lunch and recess. They're scanning, they're counting the kids, they're tracking a target student, particularly if the student has a medical need where you need to be particularly vigilant during a meal, that would be a time where that para is like on high alert. And I'm not saying we've nailed this one yet, but we're always aspiring to not have the adults congregated and clumped up, chitter chattering with each other. We know that it's tempting, and I'll say I've certainly done it before, but even then, move in and get out. You're circulating, your sneakers are on, your lanyards on your neck, you're ready to go, you're moving around, you're noticing your surroundings. Are there any changes in the dynamics between the children in the setting? In Southern California, how's the air quality? Is it too hot? When students have conflicts, we really encourage our paraprofessionals to mediate on the spot and feel empowered as adults who work at the school to support kids in that moment, using the positive behavior interventions and support systems that we have as a school, and to not over support, right? To make sure that students get to kind of grapple with conflict on their own and have a caring, competent adult sort of at the ready should they need that. And of course, when you're outside, the phone's away. An age-old story. You got to look at the students if you're supervising them. So we're not going to make you practice MISCO, but if we were together at 7:45 on a Friday morning with our paraprofessionals at Chime, we would practice doing MISCO. And Ms. Batinsky and I would do some silly student stuff where one of us would be a para and one of us would be a kid, and we'd just practice moving in, supporting, and getting out.
And that's really kind of a critical piece. And I just want to highlight there that that practice and that ability to practice in those PD sessions, in those trainings, is something that we always try and look for, especially when we're talking about, well, these are the physical, like paraprofessional moves you're going to make, and how do you work and position yourself around the classroom and with the kids. Practice is critical. Like, we can talk about it all we want, but if we've never actually done that thing or made those moves, it can be awkward, or we will do what humans do all the time, which is called path dependent behavior. I don't really know how to do the new thing you're asking me to do, so I'll do the old thing that I feel most comfortable with, and I won't actually acquire the new skill that you are with me. So we want to give those times to practice. So that slide, very simple, but kind of a powerful piece in our training, is we're going to practice in the training session with all the other paraprofessionals what it is that we want to do. Adi, could you talk a little bit about like the data collection and what we ask them to bring back, and why we give them assignments in PD?
Absolutely. The theoretical conversations we have on Friday morning are incredibly important, but unless they connect directly to what our paraprofessional staff is doing in the classroom on a daily basis, it's just going to be a thing I went to one time, and it's somewhere in my brain. But we really want to help tie in the learning that we're talking about with the tools and materials that paraprofessionals are using. So every week we have and next week we're going to do this. So bring something in. So in our first week, the item they need to bring in is a data collection tool. And then during our next session, we would talk through some theory about data collection systems at our school, some best practices, and we would take out everyone's data sheets and talk about them and practice, well, what would this count as? Would this be a high level of prompting or low level of prompting? And go through some different individuals' data sheets, so that everyone is able to connect the learning.
And obviously the data sheets are all about the IEP goals, what you were taking data on those goals. And so now today, back to today's workshop, and I know we're coming close to the end of our time. We wanted to ask, what did you notice that we as a school are highlighting and prioritizing when it comes to the role that paraprofessionals play in the classroom and at? So if you have a thought about that, why don't you go ahead and put that in either the Q&A or the chat right now, and we'll share some out, and Ms. Buczynski and Ms. Healy can sort of monitor that for a moment, and I'll just re-say the question again. So what did you notice that we as a school, Chime, are highlighting and prioritizing when it comes to the role that paraprofessionals play in the classroom and at the school? What are we trying to communicate to our paraprofessionals? And I see some of them coming in. Let's have a few more come in before we share them out. And then if we could advance to the next slide, I'll just say one last thing, because I know we're kind of getting toward wrapping up. So as you put your highlights in there, I want to say a couple of things. One is that the second half of our presentation today, that starts at the slide Para 101, is the first training that we give our paraprofessionals, and we've actually walked you through it. If you are a paraprofessional on this training, you've seen the kinds of things that we think are important to get paraprofessionals started in the classroom. If you're a special education teacher or a director of special ed and want to launch a new version of a PD program, you have our first training there. There it is for you. Part of Chime's role as a technical assistance site for the grant is to be there for you and to share materials and provide support. So if you have follow-up questions, if you have questions about, hey, would you mind sharing this or sharing that, reach out to any of us, and we're happy to share information, share materials, and support you in having highly effective paraprofessionals at your campus. Adi or Caitlin, do you want to read some highlights that people noted in the chat?
I'm going to scroll up a little so it's just not the current one. We're prioritizing para training at Chime. Paras as a supporting role for students. Fading when assisting students. Supporting independence for students. Providing guidance. Being prepared and ready to support the teacher and the staff. Someone's already walking away with MISCO. I don't know, Adi, if you see more toward the bottom of the chat.
There's a lot of acknowledgement that paras are an important part of the Chime team, communicating on how we as paras need to reach for new ideas, helping students be more independent, more about student independence. Yes, that's a wonderful takeaway from today.
And that's a great takeaway to have, because ultimately, and I share this with parents all the time and teachers all the time, colleagues, that's actually the goal that we all share in, promoting student independence to the maximum extent possible, so that eventually all these supports that we provide children can fade away and they acquire these good skills themselves. So we'll stop on that one right there. I'm maybe a minute or two late from hitting my mark on this production, but I will turn.
It looks like Dr. Studer froze again. Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Schaefer, and I just wanted to take a moment and thank Dr. Studer, Adi, and Caitlin for their time. And thank you all for attending. And please remember to join us on November 12th, where the team will be back discussing accommodations and modifications. Thank you all for being here. Stay safe, and we will see you next month.